Our guest today, Aymen T Almoayed, recently appointed as the Minister of Youth. He is literally in charge of our future. A mammoth task, but he is used to it. He started his life as a lawyer, but I won't talk about that. We want to talk about the future. Please welcome my next door neighbor, Mr. Aymen T Almoayed.
I was asked to talk about the mandate at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, what we do, where we're going, and then possibly answer questions if there are any. So the story of Ministry of Youth and Sports, especially the current mandate, started in April 2018 when His Highness Sheikh Nasser mandated us to take a look at, or take a closer look at the Ministry's activities, the Supreme Council for Youth and Sports activities, and the Olympic Committee's activities, and to establish how aligned they are with Vision 2030, and whether or not we can be more aligned and assist with the overall program. What we did, the overall initiative was titled Istijaba, and Istijaba was simply His Highness Sheikh Nasser's response to his brother, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. The mandate falls under, so the Ministry of Youth and Sports mandates falls into three categories. It doesn't sound it, but the actual functions now fall into three categories. You've got one, which is we regulate sports, so we regulate all sports activities in Bahrain. From companies, so any touch points that relate to sports, everything from sports diplomacy to sports clubs, to sports health and so on. Anything that has to do with sports comes through the Ministry of Youth and Sports. The second one, which is a no-brainer, is the youth element. The youth element, or the youth mandate, quite simply, is our responsibility to manage all interactions with youth, between youth and private sector, youth and government entities, and so on. So what we do, or what we strive to do, to be honest, is to mirror what the Supreme Council for Women do with women. Their achievements are incredible, and we're trying to live up to the benchmark that they have set for us. So effectively what that means is any youth that has issues or recommendations for the Ministry of Industry and Commerce to assist with entrepreneurship and and to catalyze their procedures and their activities would come to us, and we would support by being the chain or the link between the youth and the ministry. So our job really is to be their ambassadors, their lawyers, and so their reps in cabinet. The third part of the mandate is the exciting bit of the mandate as far as I'm concerned. We've got one part of the project under Youth and Sports which takes a large budget and scatters it around and tries to benefit as many as possible, as many programs, as many stakeholders, as many constituencies, and so on. The last part of the mandate is a high impact mandate. And what we're looking at with high impact mandate is we're looking at funding very high impact projects that do one of two things. And these are our KPIs, these are our performance indicators that we report on. The overall objective, the overall goal of the Ministry of Youth and Sports, as stated by His Highness Sheikh Nasser, is to do two things. Is to, number one, turn Bahrain into the capital of sports, and then number two, turn Bahrain into the capital of youth. Now, clearly there's no measured metrics there, and so the way that we were given, or at least the mechanism that we were given to be able to quantify this and to establish whether we're on the right track or not, is to take a very quick comparison of youths and youth services, youth benefits around the region and internationally. And so the idea is really, if you were a youth, for example, if you're a youth going through the system, dealing with the system, whether it's housing, whether it's electricity, whether it's schooling, whether it's setting up a business, or if you're setting up an NGO, if you're interacting with NGOs, if it's dealing with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as far as getting support when it comes to going to university, or if it is getting your education certificate certified by the Ministry of Education. So any of those touch points, and many, many, many more, there is about 170 different touch points that we measure, all of those need to be compared with our neighbors, need to be compared with the regional jurisdictions, and need to be compared with international. And so really what we're trying to do is we're trying to make Bahrain the jurisdiction of choice for any youth and the jurisdiction of choice for any sportsman or investor. So an investor in sports. So if you wanted to do an activity that relates to sports, we would rather that you do the marathon in Bahrain, for example, as opposed to doing the marathon abroad. We were successful in bringing Ironman to Bahrain, which was an achievement that His Highness personally oversaw 3 years ago now. So 1 year for Challenge Bahrain and 2 years for Ironman Bahrain. And the numbers this year, just to put things in perspective, we had 1,200 guests from abroad that participated in our Ironman in Bahrain. And so that's really the direction that we're going. You've got the Formula One, which is a similar success story in bringing people from abroad to establish, and there's many, many more to come, hopefully. So if I was just to go back and recap, so everything that we do at the ministry stems from Istijaba, the program. And everything that Istijaba does relates to Vision 2030. And so that sort of focus, I think, has given us the opportunity to recalibrate and reallocate resources to things that we know are very high impact, and so on. So, for example, in the first month of the ministry, or at the ministry, we were able to save about 200,000 dinars in ad hoc cost savings. So this is just over a month's time, and we reallocated it to youth centers because we were of the opinion that youth centers, the impact that it's going to have for youth centers would outweigh any sort of publicity activities that we would take. So we're going to the core as opposed to doing matters that don't add to it. The last maybe 2 bits that I'll add is, as far as policy is concerned, our policy within the ministry now embodies both the 2030 vision and embodies His Highness Sheikh Nasser's sports element. So the idea is to take the sports ethos and put it in everything that we do. So as far as any policy, any internal procedure that we adopt, it has to fit it has to fit one formula, and the formula is open, competitive, just environment. So our job is to establish an open, competitive, just environment for anything internally or externally. What that effectively means is that when people internally want to fund projects, or want to initiate projects, or they want to change something within the organization, we now actually have an office that entertains new ideas, allows ideas to compete with each other, allows parties to compete with each other, and then they hit the ground. They hit the ground if they get funded. So just to give you an example of how important this is, we've got 35 youth centers around Bahrain. We've got over 50 sports clubs around Bahrain. We've got youth centers and youth facilities that the ministry manages itself. The selection of the people that run those places and the activities that we do there depends, or historically depended on legacy issues or legacy structures. What we've done now is we've allowed the youths within the ministry to go ahead and propose what it is that they want to do. And they can take over a certain facility. So just to put things in perspective, we've got a 20-year-old that's running a 2.5 million dinar facility now in Bahrain. And she immediately decided that it would be brilliant if she was allowed to rent an empty football field that nobody was using, capitalize on that, and then reallocate those funds to other activities. So just by empowering her, we were able to at least start to do that. She now moved on to the second plot of land. We're talking about, this is a net generation of about 40,000 dinars a year that she'll be able to allocate to programs that support youth and so on. Now keep in mind that the ministry has over 90 such plots, okay? So if each one of them is able to make 50,000 dinars, then at least we can build traction with these programs. So the catchphrases that we have internally within the ministry is open, competitive, just environment, and capital of sports, and capital of youth. If there's any program that isn't aligned with that, then the program gets killed, and we just simply reallocate the resources to something that works and takes us closer to the intended goal. That's it for me. If you guys have any questions, go ahead, please.
I need some clarification when you mention the word regulation.
Yeah.
I come from a place where regulations is not a good word usually.
Sure.
I think when we have the overlap of having the youth and the Rotary in general in Bahrain is the RIDA, which is the Rotary Youth Leadership Award.
Okay.
And we've held it twice in Bahrain in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I think there is an idea, floating idea of having this program on the district level, where we bring youth from the other countries in Bahrain and work with them basically for this, and hopefully this will happen in, when Past President Mazen will take over. The idea is, do we have to go through, I think my question is, do we have to go through the ministry to get some sort of license or to do this, or we can basically approach you and say, we want to do this, can we get your blessing and move on with it?
Yeah, so two things on regulation. So number one, so there's regulation and there's support, okay? So with regulation, what we're referring to is quite simply, you as Rotarians here fall under the same law that any other sports club falls under, okay, in Bahrain. Any other youth club as well. The same law regulates you guys with the Ministry of Social Development, and also regulates the sports clubs with us. The only difference is that the identified person, meaning the identified authority that the sports clubs refer to or refer their applications to, is the Ministry of Youth and Sports, whereas the Rotary is required to submit its requests and its interactions to the Ministry of Social Development. Okay? If I may just bring you back to what the state means, what the government means by open, competitive, just environment. What we're doing now is that we're publishing, and we're in the process as well of automating the publication of how much time it takes for you to register and how much time it takes for you to interact with us. Okay? So for people that have dealt with the system, the benchmark that we currently have is for you to register an NGO similar to Rotary. When it comes through the Ministry of when it comes through the Ministry of Youth and Sports, the last application took 50 hours. That usually is unheard of anywhere in the Gulf. Okay, so effectively what we're trying to do is very similar to what the Ministry of Industry, Commerce and Tourism has done and very successfully, is for them to entice people to invest in Bahrain and to bring their operations to Bahrain. What we're trying to do is to do exactly the same thing, to bring volunteerism and NGOs here to Bahrain so that we can capitalize on investing their funds and their activities and their resources into youth and sports. So when I say regulate, all we really talk about is the registration of your entity, and then there's certain reporting that one is required to do. Now, as far as events is concerned, and as far as bringing people to Bahrain, this falls 100% in line with the ministry's objectives and the ministry's goal. The ministry's objective and the stated objective that was set by His Highness Sheikh Nasser is to have Bahrain as the capital of youth and capital of sports. If you have any event whatsoever that checks any of those two boxes, then it is our job to make sure that we facilitate everything for you. So if you're having a hard time in procedural matters, then we would be the ones. So theoretically speaking, it's not that we want you to come get a license from us. What we want is for you to come because we know the way through to get you there as fast as possible. Just to give you a very quick example, a Young Presidents Organization was going to have a very small event or an event that they were proposing for the region. We brought them in under His Highness's supervision, and what we're doing now in April is they're bringing 200 full members to Bahrain for them to get to spend time in Bahrain, have their summit meetings here in Bahrain, and so on and so forth. We would love to do something like this with Rotary and any other organization, to be honest.
I'm at Rotary Club of Adlia. I wanted to maybe for you to shed some quick light on the youth centers.
Yeah.
Now, we know that the youth centers are all over the country, and with the exception of a couple of the new big ones, they have not been fully utilized. And they touch every single community, yani grassroots.
Yeah.
So if the Rotaries have any ideas for youth projects, that we would like to take place in these locations. We want to know what the because I know that in the past I've tried, but I know that you may not, as a ministry, be able to work with a specific NGO as such, where funding is concerned. But at times it's not only funding; it's that relationship that we require to actually deliver those projects on the ground.
Sure.
So youth centers, and what the plan is for the youth centers. 35 youth centers, yeah?
So if we go back to the government program, the government program clearly stipulates that what we're supposed to be doing is regulating as opposed to operating. And by regulating, it's just putting the very wide boundaries of human activity or social activity, and then allowing people to interact. The experiments and the analysis that we've done internally establish the fact that top-down approach, as far as the Ministry of Youth and Sports is concerned, doesn't work as much. I'll give you an example of that. We've got places like the Roadrunners. So the Roadrunners do marathons. They do activities where participants come from all over, okay? And the ministry does similar activities. The numbers that we get at the ministry are a fraction of the numbers that they get. And our guys can't figure it out. We've had meetings about this, we simply cannot figure out how it is that volunteers are able to capitalize on so much goodwill, whereas we're trying to do exactly the same thing, but we just can't seem to be able to do it. So instead of fighting it, there used to be a program within the ministry which effectively allowed the ministry to compete with I want to say private sector. It's really not the private sector, but civil society. So what the ministry used to do in the past was there would be youth centers, and there would be youth centers operated by the ministry. Okay, I've personally gone to the ministry's youth centers. They are phenomenal, fantastic palaces and large structures with amazing facilities and so on. But for some reason, the numbers of participants there are a fraction of the number of participants in other civil society centers. So to answer your question, what we've tried to do was to shift it now quite a bit. So as of last week, you were absolutely right. You were not allowed to use our youth centers. So you're not allowed to use our gyms or rent our soccer fields and so on and so forth. But as of last week, we've completely opened that up. So I'll give you an example. So if youth and youth serving institutes and entities now want to utilize our facilities to be able to do anything that's youth related or anything that's good, to be honest. We're happy to cooperate. We were never allowed to rent previously. We're now allowed to rent. We were never allowed to previously. So I submitted a request to Cabinet, 2 weeks ago. Prior to that request, we couldn't cooperate with NGOs and the private sector. Okay, because government is government and private sector is private sector. The Cabinet has now allowed us to go ahead and cooperate. So what that effectively means is that it's okay for us to create a center together. It's okay for us to set up joint ventures together. It's okay for us and the Rotary or anybody else to rent facilities together, to rent facilities to you, to give you facilities, and so on and so forth. So the idea really is, instead of fighting each other or pushing in different directions, the idea is to figure out what the objective is and allow every person to do what they're best at. Okay.